The impudence, the audacity, the unmitigated gall of those knuckleheads of liberty podcasters, daring to voice opinions outside the mainstream of accepted thought. Listen if you dare. It's angry, it's funny, it's even sometimes sad, but it's always based on freedom and justice, as you will see. Here's our host, Jason McPhee.
Welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty. We're coming at you on June 15th, 2020. Somehow barely staggering our way through this Biden administration. Gosh, we say it every time, but boy, we feel lucky to be here every time because every week is just another disaster. And we're going to focus a lot on the economy in this show and a little bit of a carryover of issues from the last show where we were talking about the January 6th committee. But before we get into any of that, let me introduce you to our panel. In our upper left-hand corner, we have Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. In the upper right-hand corner, we have our screaming eagle of freedom, Tim Everett. He is a pilot in the state of California. My name is Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host today. So the last show, we were kind of wrapping up the January 6th committee. But there was one thing we just didn't have time for. There's just so much to talk about with that. And one of the things is the apparent sort of hypocrisy with the left on, I guess, on issues of insurrection and, destroying confidence in the institutions. And certainly we did talk about the fact that we had these riots going on that were sort of celebrated by the left all through 2020, but then when the riot came to the Capitol, suddenly they were completely against riotous protesting at that point. But more importantly, when they talk about the whole institution, because they're trying to claim that the election was, this was an attempt to steal the election. And, perhaps that there might have been something to that. It's hard to know given the biasness of this committee. I mean, the fact it was handpicked by Nancy Pelosi. We talked about that in the last one. But one of the things that is crazy, and the irony of this, is while this was getting ready to happen, it turned out that somebody actually tried to kill Justice Kavanaugh. A protester showed up at his near his home, and the police caught him. He had a gun, and he had traveled all the way from California to the East Coast so that he could assassinate Brett Kavanaugh, and he's already admitted as much to the police. So this isn't speculation at this point. But the issue is that all this happened because of a breach of government protocol, the way our government is supposed to operate, which is the Supreme Court is supposed to deliberate internally about their decisions, and then they have an organized release of this information once they finish their deliberations. Well, somebody leaked the story. We talked about that before on the Roe versus Wade decision that was coming up, where they were looking to overturn Roe, and so this got a lot of people started protesting outside the justices' houses, which is a no-no. That's supposed to be against the law. They're not supposed.
It is a federal crime.
Yeah, and yet the White House was not willing to condemn it. They were, Jen Psaki and Joe Biden were saying, "No, this is how we do democracy," pretty much. So they just said, "Just keep it peaceful." Well, I mean, what they were literally saying was against the law, and of course, Merrick Garland doesn't seem to have any concerns about this.
You mean they were inciting the breakage of the law? They were inciting like Trump was inciting, apparently.
And amazing
that we're supposed to believe that Trump was, and now Biden can do it with reckless abandon and no repercussions whatsoever. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, and that's because his wingman Merrick Garland really doesn't. He is solely focused on white supremacy, and this does not fall into that category. So therefore, it's not a threat. So if a Supreme Court justice gets killed, it didn't have anything to do with white supremacy, so we're cool with that. It's not
well, Jason, in defense of Merrick Garland, it is not only white supremacy he is focused on. He's also focusing on those large group of terrorists known as parents who go to school board meetings.
Yeah. That is also a big focus of his, putting those people on terrorist lists. So, just in case they're overly concerned about what their kids are.
Exactly. Those are some very gross terrorist acts that he must spend the resources of the government, the federal government, to go after.
Yeah. But anyways,
Well,
if
I'm
we
just
could
wondering where the Democrats are to denounce this leakage of the the writings of these Supreme Court justices in this situation, because that's part of the deal. They're supposed to do this in secret, and then they come out with their decision afterwards. Okay, but in the meanwhile, they don't get pressured anywhere. Otherwise, that's an usurpation of the, what do they call it when the January 6th riots occurred? What did they call that? What was the term they used?
Insurrection.
Well, it was insurrection, but it was something about the process of government. They're interfering with the process of government, right? Well, what is that when you leak documents you leak documents of what's going on in government? That's a branch of government. The judiciary is a branch of government. So what happens there? Where's the outrage there? Is there hypocrisy going on here? Is it because Roe v. Wade is the Democrats' holy grail? Is that why they don't have an issue with the leakage of the documents and the subsequent pressure being applied to the Supreme Court justices? They don't have an issue with that. They only have issues when their Democrat gets elected by a fantastic landslide. The dumbest person on the planet is elected with more votes in favor of him than anybody in the history of mankind in the United States. Okay, U.S. history. So there, that's sacrosanct. Okay, but if it goes the other way, I just see some hypocrisy. It's still government, the gears of government rolling, and they have, they're supposed to have the ability to roll even when it doesn't go your way. Democrats.
Well, they're like a ratchet, Tim. It only goes their way. It never goes their way. But let me bring up an image here, because one thing we didn't get to, aside from the Democrats sort of promoting this from the White House, Chuck Schumer himself, literally, when this item was being debated in front of the Supreme Court, he literally said words that could be seen as threatening. What he said is, "I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have unleashed the whirlwind and you will pay the price. You won't know what hits you if you go forward with these awful decisions." That's what he said. While this is now somebody shows up to kill Kavanaugh, and somehow Trump saying to peacefully protest outside the White House is insurrection.
Yes.
What this guy saying this, when these guys are appointed for life, so there is no price that they pay in the civil society, right? They literally, whatever decision they make, they get to leave whenever they feel like it, because their appointment is for life. So it's not like they have to worry about what happens in the polls, and that's by design. And the idea that he's saying you will pay the price, what price is he talking about?
What price is he talking about? That's a very good question. What price is he talking about?
Is a member of the legislative branch, what's the word I'm thinking of? Bribing, or not bribing, but
pressuring.
Anyway, well, he's threatening. Okay, a member of the legislative branch is threatening a member of the judicial branch. Is that what I'm hearing here?
Yes.
And everybody's okay with it. This is okay. Yeah. That's what I'm hearing from the Democrats. The Democrats are all okay with this. They weren't okay when January 6th came around. They weren't okay with that, but now they're okay with this. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Remember, AOC felt threatened. So threatened by January 6th, and she wasn't even in the building.
Yeah.
Whereas Kavanaugh literally had an assassin with bullets with his name on it, so to speak, right outside his house. And I haven't seen the video of Kavanaugh crying on TV about this yet, the way AOC did. So
and guess what? I abhor the idea of somebody threatening to kill AOC just as much as I abhor the threat against Kavanaugh. Okay,
yes.
I put them at the exact same level. I don't put one below or above the other. Okay, they're both wrong in my opinion, and the same amount of wrong. Even though I disagree with AOC. Okay, so see, this is called principles, Democrats. I'm principled. You're not.
But the hypocrisy here is goes deeper than this, and it's dangerous. Okay, it really is when you think about it. Because a few years ago, a supporter of Bernie Sanders went to a baseball game in somewhere in Maryland, I believe it was, and he shot Steve Scalise and some other people. And he was a supporter, he was a known supporter of Bernie Sanders. Nobody was outraged at Bernie Sanders for that. Okay? Nobody was. The guy was arrested. Well, no, I think a Capitol Hill police did end up shooting him that day. So justice was easily dispensed with in that case. But to this day, Steve Scalise is walking around with a bullet, I believe, somewhere lodged in his back or in his spine or some kind of stuff and things like that. Then we have Chuck Schumer, you mentioned him, standing on the Capitol steps, threatening the justices of the Supreme Court, right? He named them, Kavanaugh and Gorsuch. He named them. Where is the outrage? Where's the outrage? Trump told his supporters, we shall march to the Capitol where we shall peacefully and patriotic let our voice be heard. I am no supporter of Donald Trump. I voted for him, but I'm no supporter of his, okay? Because he say some idiotic things that will really get to me. But he said that. He said peacefully and patriotically. And okay, we had a riot, and all of a sudden he's responsible. But nobody's talking about the responsibility of Nancy Pelosi. So these things are becoming dangerous to us. The left is creating a society, so influencing our society where lawlessness is being tolerated as long as it's the right cause. Okay? So if Chuck Schumer could get on the Supreme Court and stand up in defense of Roe v. Wade, and he could threaten the Supreme Court justices, that's okay. If Steve Scalise could be shot in Maryland, that's okay. No big deal. Schumer could threaten. Whoever could do whatever they want. This guy could go to Brent Kavanaugh's home where his wife, his kids live, and he could attempt to assassinate him. Well, he didn't actually attempt it, but he was there to do that. And where's the outrage? There's no outrage about it. Yes, they reported on the news. Where's the outrage about this? But this is what's going on in our society. Lawlessness is becoming normal, and this is a big problem. It's a very big problem.
Leon, you asked a question, where's the outrage? Maybe I could get an image on this. One place the outrage isn't is on the front page of the New York Times. and that's what Bill Maher actually brought up on his point on his show, is that, the New York Times used to be the newspaper of record. Yes. And I think some lefties probably still think it is. But I think after these last several years, where it's become clear that they literally had a agenda to get Trump, I think people now are skeptical of what they're seeing. And Bill Maher brought that up on his show. I mean, the idea that, hey, look, you literally had somebody try to assassinate a Supreme Court justice, and you're sort of burying that story. Yes. So that's, and I think it's noteworthy that Bill Maher brings it up. And Bill Maher is no fan of the right. So this is not something where it's just, hey, guess what Sean Hannity said? No, I mean, we're talking about somebody who is clearly, supporter of the left, but he's at least open-minded to be skeptical and critical of some of what they do. And I think, he says something that's sort of stating the obvious for what a lot of conservatives have seen over the last few years, but at least he's come around. You guys have any thoughts on this media bias a little bit?
Yeah, maybe he's principled. Does he have principles? It appears. Maybe he does. One of the few on the left that has some principles left. So I salute that for sure. And he's Indeed. Done the same thing in other recent things in the news, and so I applaud him on that too. So there you go. Principles are not totally dead in the left; they're just mostly dead.
I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting to see when the left is going to try to cancel him, because eventually they will.
Oh yeah.
Because
Oh, they will.
this man is irritating them a little bit too much. They're going
They
to try to
eat their
cancel him
own.
eventually. You watch and see.
Yeah, they eat their own. That is for sure.
Oh yes, for sure, for sure.
Well,
Well,
I tell you what.
actually no. Actually, they eat anyone who express any outrage at their outrageous conduct.
Right, including their own.
Yeah, including their own. That's right.
Yeah.
You know, I tell you what, we have, gone so far into the show without talking about the economy yet, and I think the economy is still going to be in a bad shape next week. So let's do that stuff next week, because actually one of the other stories we have plays nicely into this as well, and that's why we see so much media bias. And in that case, bring you to a story where recently, and maybe we could get the visual, but Jen Psaki was recently she was the last press secretary for the White House, and and she recently took a job with, I believe it was MSNBC.
It was, yes, it's MSNBC.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so it came out, and this is what a no-no, that you're not supposed to be negotiating for a job while you're holding that job. And it turned out that for about a month, she was negotiating with MSNBC while she was holding this job in the White House, meaning that it could have biased her character and how she carried out the position. So I mean, essentially, maybe who she calls on in the because a lot of times a lot of the people do not get called on for questions who are in there in the White House press room. And it could also be too, potentially how the how questions are not just who's selected, but maybe also the response, because part of one of the issues was she had actually disparaged Peter Doocy while he was who works for Fox News. She had actually been in an interview where they discussed him being a stupid son of a I'm not going to repeat the word here, but I think you can figure out how we can finish that sentence. And part of that's too because that Biden expressed that as well during one of his press conferences when he thought the mic wasn't on. But it shows you there's this sort of pipeline with the media where the Democrat Party, where does the Democrat Party end and the mainstream media begin? And we've seen this with other people like Donna Brazile. She wound up, she was a heavy player in the Democrat Party, and she also wound up being I believe she worked for CNN as well. Yes. And they had a problem when Hillary Clinton was in a Democrat primary where she was feeding questions to Hillary Clinton's camp about what was going to be asked in a CNN debate, between her and other Democrat primary candidates. So, it really goes to question, what's going on here between the Democrat Party and the mainstream media. You guys have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think over the years, Jason and Tim, I think there have been no doubt. There have been no doubt that there is a clear pipeline between the Democratic Party and the mainstream media, what is called the mainstream media. But that pipeline also extends to social media, and to me it is quite evident that the White House, whether it's the Biden administration, whether it's the Obama administration or the Clinton administration before them, provide talking points to the mainstream media at all times. So you could always look in the paper or you look on the TV, and you see the White House will say X, and you see the mainstream media repeating the same thing. So they have the talking points are distributed somehow or the other. The problem becomes when the mainstream media start to cover up for the government, the White House. In this case, Jen Psaki. Could you imagine if in the Trump White House such a thing was happening, where the press secretary was in negotiation with a private organization to go work for them after she leaves her job or he leaves his job? Could you imagine the outrage that we would have been facing that such a thing was happening in the Trump White House? Donald Trump and his family have been involved in real estate development for God knows 40, 50 years. I don't know how long. I think it was started by Trump's father, I believe.
Yeah.
And they were trying to make everything that man ever did illegal. Even his business dealings that preceded his presidency, they're trying to make it illegal. There's something unethical, blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. And here we have Joe Biden with his son dealing with the Chinese government. Nobody seemed to care about that. Hunter Biden's laptop is sitting in the Justice Department as we speak, and God knows all the things we know about it today, and not a single charge against Hunter Biden as yet. Okay? Jen Psaki is negotiating. Jen Psaki is negotiating with MSNBC while she's still press secretary for the Biden administration. And you know what? No outrage. Nothing. It's cool. It's wonderful because they are Democrats. And they are the next thing next to God. God help us.
Tim, did you have anything?
I have nothing else. No, I have nothing else after that.
Well, Tim, this does have me really triggered the way all of these Democrats are tied in with the,
are you triggered?
The mainstream media. Maybe you can help us on that.
Yeah, I can help you out. All right. All right. Because this is recent, May 28th. A woman carrying a pistol shot and killed a man with an AR-15 style firearm that opened fire on a party. Charleston police said police responded to the shooting at about 10:45 p.m. local time on Wednesday. They're partying on Wednesday night. This is number one, the bad thing. All right, in Charleston. Wow. Yeah, obviously nobody has to get up and go work the next day. Lieutenant Tony Haslett of the Charleston Police Department said they identified a victim, 37-year-old Dennis Butler, who suffered multiple gunshot wounds near the Vista View Apartments on Renaissance Circle. Upon further investigation, we quickly learned that the victim kind of turned into like a gunman. Haslett said, that's so stupidly written. In a press conference. Anyway, Haslett said Butler had been at the apartment complex earlier in the day where he was approached about speeding while there was a birthday party and graduation party going on nearby at the park across the street. He got mad and then left the complex. Shortly after, drove back, pulled up in front, and got in the back seat, pulled his AR-15 out, started firing into the crowd. Haslett said, noting that there were approximately 30 to 40 people at the party. A female bystander who was lawfully carrying her firearm pulled her firearm and shot him and killed him, Haslett said, adding that there will be no charges being filed against her and no other injuries reported in the incident. He also noted that the bystander was not a member of law enforcement. Oh, just a regular old citizen. How about that? Yeah. She's just a member member of the community carrying her firearm lawfully. Instead of running from the threat, she engaged with the threat and saved several lives last night. Oh, you mean unlike the cops in Ilzadi? Oh, okay. Anyway, police have found no other motive for the shooting in their investigation. He added that Butler did have an extensive criminal history. Anyway, and then it goes on about stats and stuff like that. And of course, somebody has to mention that analysis of active shootings by the FBI showed it's rare for an active shooter to be killed by a civilian. Of 345 shooters over the span of 20 years, only 4 or 1% were killed by citizens, according to FBI data. Usually they die by suicide or killed by police. Well, okay, maybe we just need to have a few more people running around with, firearms, pistols, so that they can do something at least. Well, anyway, this is successful, and we like to point this out since very few people else otherwise will point this out.
Well, Tim, one of the things I thought that was a real hackery job of the Business Insider here, bringing up the stat, because the issue is not whether or not an assailant is killed by a citizen.
Are they stopped?
Are they stopped? Yes, that's the whole point, right? I mean, the whole point isn't to have a shooting gallery of crooks out there. It's literally to stop us from being victims. So
that's an excellent point. And in that case, I mean, sometimes these active killers have been stopped by people completely unarmed. They just grabbed them and beat them with something, and probably their own gun, and and stopped them. I mean, there's been plenty of those examples. You never see them on the news, though, because, again, if it bleeds, it leads, and if it doesn't bleed, it doesn't lead. It doesn't even, it gets buried.
Yes.
It doesn't even show up. So
Indeed.
there you have it.
Well, speaking of
good story.
We're at the point of our show for our Knucklehead Noise Patrol. And boy, I tell you, I can't think of any bigger hacks than the ladies of the View. And here we are talking about back to the abortion issue again, which kind of nicely ties into what we were talking about with Kavanaugh earlier in the show. But apparently, one of the, I think the Archbishop of San Francisco had, I guess, said he was going to deny Pelosi communion because, quite frankly, Nancy Pelosi is not really in keeping with the strictures of the Catholic Church on abortion. She's for it, I guess. And so the issue is then if the Catholic Church has a position that's against abortion, then it seems fine that's, not my rules, they're their rules, and if they want to enforce their rules, fine. Well, Whoopi Goldberg apparently got really upset about this. And so she said on the show, the Archbishop of San Francisco is calling for Speaker Pelosi to be denied receiving communion because of her pro-choice stance. This is not your job, dude. This is not your decision to make. So,
Are you trying to sound like Whoopi?
I've got a cold. I don't know how close I get.
You weren't even close, but it's okay.
Okay, yeah, that's not Whoopi.
Well, hopefully the visuals will help with that. But yeah, it's just absolutely hilarious. I mean, she's literally telling the Catholic Church that's not their decision to make.
Yeah.
It's just incredible, some of these lunatics they have on the View, that this woman think he has a private organization. It's a church, but it's a private organization. They have their rules about membership within the church. Okay, I was raised Catholic, but I'm not practicing in any form. They have their rules about membership, and Nancy Pelosi is clearly breaking the rules about membership of the church, and the Archbishop says you can't have communion. And then Whoopi think it's her place to tell the Archbishop of the Catholic Church that he have no right to do that. What sort of insane world are we living in right now? This is unbelievable.
All I have to say is, thankfully, Whoopi's, it's not her decision to make either. Okay, and if anybody's decision, it would be the Archbishop. So sorry, Whoopi, you're out on this one.
Well, all I've got to say is thank goodness that the View is not the reality that we all have to live with.
True. Very true. Yes.
But of course, if we don't fight to stay free, you never know. I mean, a lot of their views are the views of the current administration. So you gotta keep up that fight and be willing to stand tall and say what you think out there and don't be coward. But otherwise, I can't think of anything else. So until the next one, stay free.
Indeed. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.